Welcome to our JDM RX7 build presented by Turn 14 Distribution. That's right, guys, it's time to get down to work on our FD RX7, and man, am I ever excited about this one. If you know me, you know I'm an old rotary guy, and I am pumped to get this thing together, and we're gonna do that very quickly. We are gonna do this in 4 episodes or less, so this is not gonna drag on for 6 months. This build is gonna happen very quickly and very efficiently. And of course, the car has been freshly painted. As you would have seen a couple of months ago on our channel, we had our friends at FH Pro Collision in Brampton, Ontario paint it this very beautiful mica blue pearl, I believe is what it's called. I think it's a Spirit R color, and man, it gets my spirit pumped because this looks so good. And I know with these like weak sauce Mazda 3 wheels on here and no engine bay, it's doing a wheelie stand. It doesn't look great, but believe me, when this thing is done, it's gonna look mega good, and it's gonna have the powertrain to go with it. So that is more or less where we're at now. So I think it's time to get down to some work. Well, we are making progress here, piecing together our rotary. As you can see, we've put on the water housing and pump, vapor honed this, made it look super sexy. And as you can see with the turbo setup, we are using TurboSource's investment cast manifold, which is a twin scroll manifold, really beautiful design, designed specifically to work with these twin scroll EFR turbochargers. And we're using their internally gated turbocharger, basically because we don't want to deal with all the heat management in the engine bay of external gates, not to mention the extra plumbing and the space constraints in this engine bay. This is a really nice compact unit that just keeps it all in here. We don't have to worry about all that, external stuff. However, we have upgraded the internal wastegate to this TurboSmart unit, which has some changes to the internals of it and makes it more responsive across the RPM range than the factory unit. And this, of course, is TurboSmart's blow-off valve, and it too is meant to improve response. So we've really built this whole engine. If you go back to that Valvoline engine build series, we really built this whole engine around response. However, we are going to remove all of this stuff now because we've come to the realization that it's going to be easier to install the engine without the turbo on it. And there's just a lot of space constraints in a relatively small car and a relatively small engine bay. So this is going to come off now, and then we'll get to work to putting that engine in the bay. Yeah?
Yeah, see what happens. It's like super sketchy, everything's...
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, okay. You stop there.
It's going to clear once it's down on the mounts, but right now it's so high that it hits it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, okay, this mounts in.
Sweet. Well guys, the keg is in the engine bay and the gearbox is attached and it's in the hole in the tunnel, so that is a victory, but we are clearly FD noobs because when we hooked up the engine hoist to the engine, we didn't factor in how far back in the hole it was going to go. So the chains on the tilter were hitting on the firewall here. Hopefully we didn't scratch our brand new paint.
I watched it, there was no scratching that happened.
This is good. So we did have to reposition the chains at one point. And now, because this doesn't use a traditional transmission mount across the tail end of the transmission, it uses that power brace that runs down the spine of the car, we have just ratchet strapped the whole engine here to kind of get the tail shaft up in the air so that we can go up with the lift and put in that power brace rather than like going in on our backs underneath here. That would be uncivilized. When you've got a lift, you want to go up in the air.
Can I just say, look at the size of this engine.
Isn't it amazing?
From that aspect, this is the greatest engine ever built when you can fit it into an engine bay like this.
Yeah, it's barely bigger than the transmission.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's such a compact little guy. I mean, when
Too
we
bad if
dress
it's
it
not
up,
reliable, right?
I mean, they can be reliable, but they do not like detonation. They can be very reliable if it never ever detonates. But the moment it detonates, it's game over. So they do not tolerate any of that. So it takes a really good tuner and a really good tune, which we will have solutions for in coming episodes. So as I mentioned, this car doesn't use a traditional transmission mount cross member here. Instead, it uses this PPF or power plant frame, or what some people call a power brace, that runs down the center tunnel here and mounts to both the differential and the transmission. So it really ties the whole powertrain together, I think, in a really clever way. Probably adds a bunch of stiffness to the chassis as well, but it's a pretty elegant solution, although, you know, maybe a little bit more cumbersome than the traditional mounts. So I'm sure there's pros and cons to it that Mazda must have factored into their thinking. I'm assuming it's about stiffness more than anything else, and maybe some weight savings too. And as you can see, these little cross members that you might confuse with a transmission mount are not connected to anything. They're just braces to stiffen up the tunnel, front and rear. And the reason they look so clean and the reason the gearbox looks so clean is Pete ran them over to our friends at Honey Seal, who do dry ice blasting as well as wax base sealing, like we did on my Type R.
Oh, progress has happened. Holy smokes. This engine comes together so easily when you've got so much space to work. As you guys just saw, I am tightening the belt here that has this full, FFE full function engineering pulley, and that is because we've deleted the air pump that goes here because we've got the single turbo setup. You saw me bolt that up as well. By the way, for those of you that haven't been following along, this is a 7670 EFR. So it's a smaller size turbo for this engine. I know some of you are gonna say it's choking it out, it's not gonna make all the horsepowers, but we don't want that. We want a high response setup. So when I put this fuel system together, I said, Dave, that was just so easy. We ran a bunch of lines, it was quick, and there's a reason for that. I just realized when we were shooting that clip, I forgot to install a fuel pressure regulator that is very, very important to a fuel system.
It certainly is.
It really, really is. And we are, of course, using a Radium Auto on this one. Is beautiful. It has a fuel damper built into it, which I think is going to be a worthy asset on a system like this that has huge injectors. So this will certainly help like dampen the pulses. And I guess my biggest issue right now is where to install this. I put the upper intake manifold on and the ABS unit here in hopes of figuring out a good spot for this fuel pressure regulator. And as luck would have it, the upper intake manifold did have a small little aluminum bracket here, this little piece that I should say it's cast into the metal here, that was right there that I was able to mount this on. And I think it looks really good. It's gonna be super easy to adjust.
Now that Pete's got the fuel system wrapped up, we are moving on to the ignition system, and for that we have turned to Core Components, who make this really slick setup, including this aluminum mounting bracket that puts these 4 AEM smart coils down on the frame rail here. So it's a really nice short run from the coils to the plugs, which is a nice thing. In fact, AEM specifies that these are really best used with a short run setup like this. And Core Components website does say that this is the only kit available on the market that puts the coil packs in a location that doesn't require you to delete AC or power steering. It's a really nice spot for it, and I think a very nicely designed bracket. Comes with excellent instructions. As you can see, we've moved on to removing the power steering cooling line here, which is a big bulky unit that sits right in the front opening, which we don't want anymore because we're going to be going to a V-mount, front mount intercooler and radiator setup, and this is going to be in the way of that airflow. So this is going, not in the bin, but on the shelf for future use in a restoration of somebody else's FD. And in its place is this amazingly compact little heat exchanger. As you can see, it uses this finned design that the fluid's going to flow through, and this is going to be what cools the fluid. And it replaces this whole thing in the loop. So, return and feed, and it's going to live right in here on the front subframe. So really elegant little part, again, from Core Components with all the hardware and hoses and everything we need to fit it up to a left-hand drive car. We are going to have to do a little bit of our own engineering with different line lengths and so on to make it work on a right-hand drive car. All right, just tightening down the last and fitting here on this Core Components cooler, and as you can see, it's a remarkably simple setup. This is the hose that they supplied with the clamps they supplied, and this little brass 90 that they also supplied that connects to the factory return line here. We were able to use the hard feed line that comes off the old loop here. Just ran our own length of hose. We used their clamps, and it is done. So, man, I love how simple and clean that is. It's all tucked away really nice and tight to the engine, so we're gonna have lots of room here for that V-mount.
So that was quite a comprehensive job, but wow, the GREW product, this is a V-mount kit from them. They're standard 19 or type 19 standard kit. And I love it because, as you guys just saw, everything bolts together. And it is one of the few kits that has a lot of ducting, which I think is critical on FDs. Did, however, have to build this little bracket, as you guys just saw. And that was because there's supposed to be a condenser that goes here. Believe it or not, a condenser can go in here. You can still retain AC with this. We don't have it, so we did have to just like close this off right here. Now, this kit was not designed to be used with a single turbo, at least not this version of it. So they don't include a pipe that would run from the intercooler to our turbo. And I'm going to have to figure something out here. And unfortunately, I don't have what I need. So I'm gonna put in an order with Turn 14 to get what we want. But for now, you can kind of see what I'm thinking is I need a 2-inch to 2.5-inch transition tube like this from Vibrant, and then we'll get that. And this is a 45-degree aluminum piece of intake. And you can see this should work. So the compressor inlet on the turbo is 3.5 inches. I do have this nice Vibrant 3.5-inch coupler here. However, the issue is, as you can see, the hose that we have here, the Samco rad hose, is going to interfere. So what I think I'm gonna do is turn this down, figure out a transition here to kind of get this hose up and out of the way like that. This was a rather easy fix. There's a transition in there, and this is the original piece of this hose that we ended up cutting to make this V-mount setup fit. And now I'm just gonna put this on here as such like that. And would you look at that? Now we're gonna have the clearance we need. So here is our intake, and as you can see, it was actually very, very simple. We had a 45-degree bend and this coupler, all 3.5-inch from Vibrant. I did not have a 3.5-inch Vibrant air filter, so I put the AM one on here right now. I did order one from Turn 14, so we will replace this to make this all Vibrant. And look at this, man. Here's another reason why we went with the whole GREW system. Like, look how nicely that fits up in this area right here. Like, this is so good.
All right, guys, I think that is a wrap on this episode, but man, have we ever made a lot of progress. This engine bay is looking remarkably complete. There are, of course, a few more details to take care of before this thing gets its first start in the next episode. That's right, we're not dragging this out. This is going to be a quick first start. So in the next episode, you'll see us finishing everything up here, get the exhaust system in there, get it all wired up, and turn the key for the first time. Hopefully with our engine builder, Joe Ferguson, here with us. We'll see how that plays out. But in any case, guys, I am stoked on how much progress we've made and how remarkably simple this engine is. Once you go to single turbo and delete all of that rat's nest of vacuum lines and get rid of the air pump and all that, this is actually really simple and pleasant to work on, isn't it, Pete? So I've really enjoyed it. I hope you guys have enjoyed it, and I hope you're stoked to see this thing fire up and make some sweet brap noises in the next one.